All right, we are back for another night of videos. We'll see how many we can churn out. This is what, number seven. So number seven. So we'll start out with Patrick, so everybody's Eskimo brother, and just kind of jump in. So we started with the 8th overall pick, $22, Mark Andrews. Now, Mark Andrews is a friend of mine. I had him last year. I traded him away, much to my regret. He was fantastic. He had a career season last year, his 4th season in the league as a tight end. 107 receptions, over 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. He was one of the best pass catchers in fantasy. I think he was like the 9th best. Yeah, he led all tight ends in targets, receptions, yards, touchdowns. But I think the real thing was he was the number one. He was like a top 10 receiver even. He was so good. So I think this year Lamar Jackson hopefully stays healthy more. I think, with Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman is supposed to replace him, so to speak. But Marquise Brown leaves a massive target share left there. So I don't know if Andrews will have quite as great a season as he did last year. I think he'll maybe come back down a little bit more, so talking like 85 receptions, maybe 1,050 yards, so maybe 300 yards less, but still high amount of touchdowns, like 8, maybe even 10. But that's like close to 200 fantasy points, and you got him for $22. I mean, if we did a comparison, Brian took Michael Pittman for 38. Mark Andrews had the better season last year. And by the projection that I just made, Mark Andrews is going to have a very similar season to Michael Pittman. And you're getting him at 22. So great deal. Really, really like Mark Andrews. He is the number one target in the Ravens offense, just like Travis Kelce is the number one target in the Chiefs offense. And both those offenses love their tight ends. So I like him a lot. I think he's going to be fantastic for as long as Lamar Jackson is healthy. He's really good in the red zone. So really good start. I really like the player, and I really like the price. Then, very next pick, we took Deebo Samuel for $43. Deebo was the number 2 fantasy receiver last year. He was a monster for Charlie. I think she got him for like $5, and he was just incredible. He had 1,400 yards receiving on 77 receptions, and then he had another 365 yards rushing on 59 carries. So we're talking like, he had 14 touchdowns between the two, over 1,700 yards of offense. Like, that's 1,900 yards for Cooper Kupp, 1,600 yards for Justin Jefferson. Deebo Samuel was right in between the two of them. So that's crazy, crazy, crazy high. It was his breakout year. He got an extension. How high can Deebo Samuel go? This is his offense now with the 49ers. New quarterback in Trey Lance, who is now my starting quarterback. But can we feed Deebo Samuel? How are we going to use Deebo Samuel? Samuel is the ultimate test case in a hybrid player. He both receives and runs, and that's kind of what insulates down Elijah Mitchell, is Deebo Samuel taking away some of his carries, especially his red zone carries, because he's the best pass catcher on the 49ers. So I don't think Deebo's going to have as incredible a season. I think maybe Elijah Mitchell stays healthy. We'll get into that, I guess, more when we get into other 49er running backs. But even if he doesn't, I think they'll run more with the 49er running backs. I think Brandon Ayuk's not in the doghouse anymore, so hopefully they spread it out just a little bit more, and George Kittle stays healthy the whole time. So I think more along the lines of he'll get maybe 1,000 yards receiving, and then have another 400 yards rushing. So still 1,400 yards, which is still basically a top 5 receiver. I don't think he's going to get 14 touchdowns. I think you're in for massive touchdown regression. But I still could see double digits, so like 10 touchdowns, so not too bad. I don't I I'm surprised he was the number 2 receiver last year, and yet we had quite a few receivers like Devontae Adams was worse than him. Cooper Kupp was better than him. He went for 64. Justin Jefferson was right behind him. He went for 69. Uh, I mean, I took Tyreek Hill for 43. Michael Pittman went for 38. So, like, a lot of the top end receivers went around his price, but he was incredible. Like, if Michael Pittman hopefully takes the next step and is a top 10 receiver, Deebo Samuel was a top 2 receiver, and he went for $5 more. So I guess we're betting on the touchdown regression and some regression from receiving just because we're going to spread it out more. But even with that regression, I still think Deebo Samuel's tremendous. I still think Kyle Shanahan's one of the best play callers in football. I think without Jimmy Garoppolo at the controls, maybe this offense becomes more explosive. So typically, I do think he is in for some regression, but at the price tag, I don't argue with that. Like 43 for Deebo Samuel is incredible price for a player who was literally the second best player at his position last year. So yeah, really good start to the draft. Then we dipped in. We took Leonard Fournette. We took him for $50. So a lot of us know about Leonard, especially all the Tampa people. Leonard Fournette got cut by the Jaguars. They won a Super Bowl a couple years ago. Now he's here with the Bucs. He was a top. I mean, he finished the year as the 7th best running back, but through the first 14 games, he was the 3rd best running back in fantasy until his injury in Week 15. So he missed the last 3 weeks. But he was just incredible. He was top. He still finished top 10 in yards, touchdowns, routes, targets, receptions, and receiving yards for a running back. And he had 812 yards rushing, 450 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns, so 1,200-yard running back. He didn't even play the whole year. So if Fournette is healthy the whole year, I do think, again, we possibly are in for a bit of touchdown regression, but probably not much. Maybe like 10 touchdowns now. We'll get more rushing because I think the Bucs will try to run it more and save Brady. So maybe he cracks 1,000 yards and a little less receiving, especially with Rachaad White, who they drafted in the 4th round of Arizona State as a pass catcher, and Giovanni Bernard is healthy. So maybe like 300 yards receiving and like 1,000 yards rushing. So more yards actually, 1,300 yards total, maybe 10 touchdowns. I like Leonard Fournette. I mean, I remember when Brian was saying when Leonard Fournette was still competing with Ronald Jones during the 2020 season, how could I still believe in Leonard Fournette? And I've always seen the talent with him. He's always, even when he went back to LSU, he always had that long speed, that incredible power, just that acceleration. And he is older now, so he could decline, but this is his backfield. I would say, obviously, the best player on the Bucs offense is Tom Brady. I think the most consistent player is Mike Evans, but Leonard Fournette probably is the most important because second most important behind Tom Brady, even more so than some of the offensive linemen, funny enough, because even if the offensive line is declining with all of the injuries, if you feed Leonard Fournette, he's going to get you at least 5 yards carry, if not more. You just got to keep feeding him. That's just the nature of the beast. So hopefully he stays healthy the whole year. He did have ankle injuries going through when he was in Jacksonville. And we're shooting for basically his 4th top 10 fantasy campaign in like 6 years. So we've had 3 in 5. So pretty good rate. And he's on a better offensive line than he had in Jacksonville, obviously with a better quarterback and better offense. So a lot of things trending up for him. 50 is a bit rich. I don't mind it, though. Again, the going rate of running back is high. So, I mean, hell, for comparison's sake, I mean, we were talking about this on Stephens. You got David Montgomery and Elijah Mitchell for 32 and 28. So $60 between those two. I'd rather have Leonard Fournette. I just think he's been terrific in Tampa. I don't see any reason for him to not be terrific. Obviously, I don't think he came into a camp in shape after signing a contract extension, so that is a bit worrisome, but hey, hopefully he's in shape now. The next pick, 29 overall, $48. This was the one where I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. You went in, you took a leap, another guy with touchdown regression, James Conner. So Conner re-signed in Arizona. Chase Edmonds is in Miami. We talked about that on Stefan's video. This is the James Conner show in Arizona now. And Conner showed all that faith that the Steelers had in him, why they had so much faith and gave him such a long leash. He was the most used back in the red zone in the NFL. I think he had he had 16 carries within 5 yards of the end zone. So he had 18 touchdowns. Again, more touchdown regression. But he was a top 5 running back last year. People don't really know that. Probably got an incredible deal on him in the draft, and he definitely made up for it. I think the touchdown regression will be a moot point, though, because with Chase Edmonds gone, Connor's going to get more work. The worry is injury history, but if he stays healthy, he'll get, last year he only had 750 yards or so. He'll get over 900 yards, probably because the Cardinals will use him so much near the red zone. He'll probably still get, 11 rushing touchdowns, another 2 or 3 receiving, so 14 touchdowns. He had 18 last year, so a little regression. But, around 350 some odd receiving yards. Is that top 5 fantasy running back? No, but that's top 10. That's around 7th or 8th or so. Yeah, Leonard Fournette had 221 fantasy points last year after missing the last 3 games. So I'm basically ballparking Conner around there. So that would make him the 7th or 8th best fantasy running back. Again, he's got to stay healthy. I think you later on took Darrell Williams, but the backup isn't Darrell Williams. I'm pretty sure the backup is Eno Benjamin. So that's probably something you ought to pay attention to. But I like James Conner. If he wasn't so injury prone in Pittsburgh, he'd probably still be in Pittsburgh. So that is the one rub. But even more so than talent with Conner, it's the opportunity. He just gets the ball near the goal line so much that he scores so much, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter how inefficient he is. It doesn't matter if he's not really the fastest guy. He's not going to give you any breakaway runs. But he just gets so much volume in the red zone. He's just got a nose for the end zone, so to speak. We spent 48 on him. So, we got a pretty good core. We got 2 good running backs, some touchdown regression, but some health, maybe progression. We got the number 2 fantasy receiver last year. We got a good tight end and a great price. So, then I guess we're hitting our number 3 receiver, so to speak, now, because Andrews is I guess Debo's our number 1 and Andrews is our number 2, and I really just think they're both number 1s, so that's great. And we took Terry McLaurin. I like Terry. I think he's in that weird range of guys who have a ton of talent, but they haven't had that real incredible, amazing Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp kind of season, DK Metcalf. They're all in the same draft class. Yeah, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin. Debo is in that same draft class, so I guess Debo's the one who's made good on it. But I'm happy he got an extension. I just am unhappy because I don't like Carson Wentz, and that Carson Wentz is his quarterback. I think that's really what probably brought him down, more so than anything else, if I'm being honest, just because, Terry McLaurin's a really good player. He had 1,000 yards last year, 5 touchdowns. Good, solid player. $22 is the same you got for Andrews. I think Andrews is obviously the better player, better steal, but McLaurin will probably be in the ballpark of that. I think maybe he breaks 1,100 yards, maybe a little bit more touchdowns, because I actually think He was unlucky with his touchdowns last year with only 5. I think he might get 6 or 7. But $22 for Terry McLaurin, like that's a pretty good deal. I mean, there were some good mid-range deals, but like A.J. Brown went for 30. He's a new offense. Cortland Sutton, who I like a lot, went for 28. There's a bit of upside with McLaurin in Washington because we just haven't seen it yet. But I still need him. I still need Wentz to feed him, and he was basically the 25th wide receiver last year or so. I think he'll be right around there, which as a wide receiver, I guess 3 on your team is really good. So that's our core. That's our 5-team core. A pretty good, Sarah went jumbo, half of her money on 2 really outstanding wide receivers. Andre, who we'll talk about later, went a lot of money on 2 outstanding running backs. We had a team like Stefan, who just spread it out and got 5 core players with 2 running backs and 2 wide receiver. No, 3 running backs, I guess we're counting Edmonds, and 2 wide receivers. And you kind of went that way as well, only instead of 3 running backs, you have 2 running backs and 3 wide receivers, with 1 being a tight end. But then we had to budget, and that was hard. So, 85th pick, $3, Tua Tagovailoa. So, we're hoping, I'm hoping with you, I have Tyreek Hill. We're hoping Tua takes that next step. We haven't seen it in 2 years. We haven't seen it probably, if I'm being honest, in 4 years since his sophomore year at Alabama. I mean, he won it as a true freshman when he came into the national championship game, but it's been a while. I think this is more projection pick. He has Mike McDaniel, who was the offensive coordinator for the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan as the new head coach. They've rebuilt the offensive line. They've got many, many weapons now. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki. They brought in Cedric Wilson. They signed Chase Edmonds. They signed Raheem Mostert. They brought in Myles Gaskin. There's a lot. There's a lot of toys to work with. So he's been very, very conservative in the NFL. He's in the same draft class as Justin Herbert, which is unfortunate for him because Herbert's been excellent and he's just kind of been there. So this is a projection pick. I mean, it kind of sucks because if we'd known, what is it? Olivia for Warren picked up Aaron Rodgers for the same $3 10 picks later. So it sucks that we got Tua. We probably ought to have gotten him for $1. I don't know why we got him for $3. But Tua, we hope takes the next step. I think he'll be all right. I'm not sure, honestly. He's going to be a back-end, fantasy starter, so we'll start there. If Dak's around 10 and Derek Carr's around 10, Tua's more around 15. Could he take the next step and be tremendous? Yeah, but it's very rare for a guy to have not shown anything the first 2 years. So if the offensive line can hold up and if he can actually get the ball to Tyreek Hill, there's obviously the upside for him to be a top 10 quarterback. I see it. I just think he has a harder time getting there than some of the other guys. But it's fine because it's quarterback. You can always find a quarterback if he's not working out. I think Tua will somewhat break out, get close to 4,000 yards, probably get 25 touchdowns or so, and then a little bit of rushing. So he'll be good, but I don't think he'll be great. It's tough just because quarterback, there's so many quarterbacks now, and you're always competing. If last year Josh Allen threw for 4,400 yards and 36 touchdowns, and he was the best fantasy quarterback in football because he also added another 750 yards rushing. I don't think Tua is going to get there, and so this is a player that I would be on the lookout to possibly upgrade from. If you want to trade with Warren to get Aaron Rodgers, I'd consider it just because even on the high end, I'm not sure. He only threw for 12 2,600 yards last year and like 16 touchdowns. He would basically almost have to like double both of those things. Yeah, he would have to basically double both those things to be like a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And I don't think he's going to do that. So, range of outcomes for him is lower. I don't mind it because $3 isn't much, but I'd probably be on the lookout to maybe like get an upgrade. Or if he's not doing it, if it's like week 3 and he hasn't done jack, I would cut him and just go get like a Matt Ryan or someone because he's gotta step up. Quarterback's the easiest position to fill. Then after that, I mean, we had to wait a while. So 75 picks later, we're taking Julio Jones, a $160, $2. I mean, obviously he was underwhelming in Tennessee last year. I think he missed 7 games. He only had 31 receptions, 434 yards receiving. He's missed 14 games the last 2 years. But when it's kind of funny if you watch his like ADOT, if you watch like his when he's healthy. When he's healthy, he's still elite. He still gets separation. He still reads coverage really well. It's really with Julio, the question is, how healthy is he? So he's playing on the minimum for the Bucks. He's competing for the number 3 receiver spot. I had this conversation with Andre, actually, and Andre was surprised that they brought in, that they re-signed Chris Godwin for 20, and Julio's making the minimum. And if we're being honest, I mean, like, the thing is, Godwin's younger. Godwin has been very productive and knows the offense. And Julio's just older, and you're not sure if Julio can stay healthy. But if we did things in a vacuum, and you told me both of them were healthy, I think the more talented player is Julio. I mean, just based off the statistics. But how healthy is he going to be? So I think the Bucs are going to limit his reps just to keep him healthy because the Bucs are a playoff team. Like they're gonna want him in the playoffs. You don't want to be like last year where like Antonio Brown explodes and everybody gets hurt. So it's really just like Mike Evans and a bunch of like practice squad guys. They need healthy receivers. So like Julio, I don't mind the pick for the price. He'll probably get like maybe 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. I'd probably be on the lookout if he's not like breaking through in these first few games without Chris Godwin. I'd probably cut him, unfortunately, because there's just a lot of guys to feed in this Tampa offense, and Tom Brady likes to spread the wealth. So, yeah, if Godwin comes back and he's just soaking up 12 targets a game, and then Mike Evans is getting 9 targets a game, and, you know, Leonard Fournette's getting 5 targets a game, and Cameron Brate's getting 5 targets a game, then there's not a whole lot of space for, like, Julio, and I didn't even count Russell Gage. So, yeah, I like Julio. It's a dice roll. You're kind of just throwing a dart at the board, seeing if it sticks. But I'd be willing to move on if he doesn't show anything without Godwin. After that, we took Isaiah Pacheco. So he was a 7th round pick by the Chiefs in this year's draft. He's really fast. 4.37 40-yard dash. Yeah, got it. So he was at Rutgers 4 years, so he's older player, 22. Not great efficiency. He didn't get I think he was only 4.3 yards per carry, which sounds good, but please keep in mind that's in college. In college, a lot of guys average like 9, like double that. But he was on a bad team. So I see him more as a returner and a pass blocker. There's the possibility, I suppose, just like the Chiefs wide receivers, we don't really know what's going on with the Chiefs running backs. Like, yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been the starter the last couple of years, but he hasn't really been all that impressive. They signed Ronald Jones, who's now 4th on the depth chart. I guess Pacheco's the backup, so that's kind of weird. I'm not really sure what to expect. Maybe like 300 yards rushing. It's really like, does Clyde Edwards-Helaire stay healthy? Does Pacheco like show you that speed that he had? If Pacheco was playing in the starter, obviously he's fantasy relevant because the Chiefs' offense is nuts and it's a running back with pulse. But yeah, you know, I mean, getting him for $1 is not bad at all. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire isn't impressive. So if he can steal that job, it'll be an uphill battle, but it won't be the first time Andy Reid's pulled like someone late in the draft and really liked them. And there's a lot of fantasy relevance in that offense. So I like the pick. Next at 205 for $1, Kenneth Gainwell. I had Gainwell last year. I like Kenneth Gainwell. He played 40% of the snaps last year. I think only in maybe 5 games or so. So he wasn't on the field a ton. He was like the third down back. He got 544 yards total on 68 rushes and 33 receptions. So he's kind of he's the third down back. The problem is the Eagles are very much a timeshare team, not even a committee team. It ought to be Miles Sanders' job for the talent, but then they bring in Boston Scott to get all of the goal line work. That's why Sanders didn't score a touchdown last year. Kenneth Gainwell gets all the catches, and he does a lot of pass blocking, and Sanders is just the pure rusher. If you could combine all 3 of them, you'd have a great player, but they all do different things, and they play them all in different ways. So, could he have a second-year breakout as a running back? Yeah, and it's a possibility. I wouldn't count on it. Especially because through the years, this Eagles offense they are not fantasy-friendly to running backs. They just keep, even if I think Miles Sanders is the most talented running back, they don't give him the ball enough. They just don't do it. I dislike it a lot. So yeah, I could see more rushes, 350 yards rushing, 250 yards receiving. So we're talking 600 yards and then maybe 4 touchdowns. So yeah, no, I like him. He's a good player. He finished the year strong. Well, he finished the year strong with 1 game when he got 12 carries. But it's rare that he gets more than 8 carries in a game. So, again, something happens to Miles Sanders. He's the guy. He probably has some utility to whoever I think Rich is the Miles Sanders owner. He probably has a lot of utility to him more so than you. But I like him on a talent basis. I thought he was pretty terrific out of Memphis, but the Eagles just got to pick a guy. I'm so tired of this, we're going to use this guy to do this thing, and this guy to do this thing, and this guy, and they just kind of kill each other. And they're not even that good at doing all of those things, if I'm being honest. Gainwell's a good pass catcher, but it's not like he's like J.D. McKissick, who's a really good pass catcher. And it's not like Miles Sanders is as good a runner as, Aaron Jones. He has no vision. And it's not like Boston Scott's as good as James Conner in the red zone. So, honestly, I really wish instead of a committee, they would just pick 2 guys and just kind of figure it out, or give one guy a 60-40 share instead of this 33-33-33 thing, or I guess it's 40. Yeah, it's more 40-30-30 because Sanders gets a bulk of the work, but it's really annoying. Yeah, then we mentioned before, $222, Darrell Williams. Spent 4 years with the Chiefs. Chiefs let him go. Chiefs aren't great at running backs. Surprised they let him go. He's a good pass catcher. He's not great rusher. If something happens to James Conner, he might be the backup, but I think Eno Benjamin is just because Eno's better. Again, he had 550 yards rushing last year for the Chiefs because Edwards-Helaire was hurt. He was the starter. Ugh, that was rough. I had them both. Ugh. He had 452 yards receiving. There's a reason why he's not there anymore. So, 250 some odd yards rushing, probably 100 yards receiving. It's really just, has he beaten Eno Benjamin for the backup job? I don't think he has. I think he's lost that job. And if James Conner gets hurt, that's really it. There's not too much else to say about Darrell Williams. He was the 21st best fantasy running back last year, but if he was so good, why'd the Chiefs get rid of him? Why'd he sign for the minimum on a team that has him as the 3rd running back now? Whew. Okay, $229 again. Rex Burkhead. The ghost, the zombie that is Rex Burkhead continues to find utility in the NFL. He is 32. the Texans have cut Marlon Mack. The starter is Dameon Pierce, and lo and behold, Rex Burkhead is the backup. So he had 122 carries last year, which his career high before that was 74. He wasn't great. The offensive line wasn't great. He had, a little over 600 yards, counting the rushing and receiving. He's the third down back. He's probably going to get like 350 yards rushing, probably like 250 yards receiving. He has some fantasy utility again if something happened to Dameon Pierce, and just because he catches the ball. I don't know how much they'll work Pierce, but I can't imagine they give him like super bell cow back carries. So I have no idea how Rex Burkhead is still relevant all this time later. Like, I remember him winning a championship on Andre's team. I remember winning a championship with like New England, and now we're here, and he's 32, and he's on the Texans, and he's somehow the backup, and I'm just like, well, I didn't see that coming at all. $2.34, $1. Wan'Dale Robinson. So at this point, God, we've gone pretty deep. Wan'Dale, I think, is your flex right now. He was drafted in the second round by the Giants. Brian Dable likes him as a slot receiver, but he's only like 5'8". I think he's like $180. He's like real tiny. I know they like him. I know, like, he was at Kentucky. He had, 104 receptions and 1,300 yards receiving. He's explosive and versatile, but I don't know how much New York's going to use him. There's a lot of guys in New York. So, like, there's Kenny Golladay, who they signed to a big money contract and has looked terrible. Kadarius Toney, who I liked and I talked about in Justin's video, who's very explosive but also fragile. There is Sterling Shepard's still there. We still have Darius Slayton is still there. There's... Man, I'm counting it in my head. I'm just like, there's a lot of guys. So, Wan'Dale Robinson's probably the slot guy. He's explosive. I don't know if he's really a starter in our league, to be honest with you. I mean, he's a rookie. Maybe we'll see what happens. But, like, Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback for the Giants. I don't know how much Daniel Jones is going to feed him. So we'll be a little conservative. We'll give him, like, 600 yards receiving. Maybe, like, another 50 yards because they're going to use him on gadget plays rushing. But he's like, he's an upside play, but he's more of an upside bench guy. I would highly consider getting someone off free agency. I think, who are the top guys right now? Tolbert I just dropped. Jalen Tolbert, the number 2 for the Cowboys. Zach Ertz, AJ Green. If I was looking for a starter in a pinch, I would probably take any of those guys over Robinson, just because I haven't seen him do anything, and even more so than that, I really don't believe in the Giants' offense. And if I was going to pick someone on the Giants' offense to believe in, it would either be Saquon, based on his talent, or Kadarius Toney, also based on his talent. I liked Robinson, though. He has the opportunity. It's not a great offense, and I don't know if they can really support 3 receivers, which is what would have to happen for him to be fantasy relevant. Van Jefferson's another guy. He's a slot receiver for the Rams. I would probably start him over Robinson. And yeah, pick $2.37, $1, Sammy Watkins. Another year of Sammy Watkins. So he was on Baltimore last year. He only had 27 receptions, a little under 400 yards. He's been like hurt like 6 of the last 7 years. And I don't think he's had like he hasn't had like a top 35 receiving year since like 2015? Yeah, because he came out in 2014 with OBJ and Landry. God, that's been a long time ago. He's still only 29, so that's a credit to him. But I don't really know what to make of the Packers' offense. But even more so than that, even though I don't know, I wouldn't believe in Sammy Watkins just because he gets hurt so much. I mean, he couldn't do it with the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. Why would I believe he's going to do it with Aaron Rodgers now? So Yeah, I mean Watkins is he has talent, but he always gets hurt. Always, every year, year after year. So I would just straight cut him and get someone off free agency, and that someone I would probably start. Um, I mean, is there the possibility? I suppose there's the possibility he could become the number one in Green Bay, but he's not going to stay healthy. It's just simple as that. Okay, so we kind of ran through it. So what do I think overall? I mean, I like the team at the top, but there are lots of depth issues. I mean, the running backs aren't bad on the back end. I don't mind, Pachenko, Gainwell. Probably get rid of Williams, Reno, Benjamin. Burkhead's got some utility. I could always trade him. But really, the question is, like, between Julio Jones, Sammy Watkins, and Wan'Dale Robinson at flex, are any of them startable? And I think the answer is no. I would probably cut Watkins. I'd pick up somebody. But the rest of the team's pretty good. I would consider maybe looking for an upgrade, as I mentioned, on Tua. But, I mean, overall, there's touchdown regression. But, man, Fournette and Connor, Debo, and Andrews is just tremendous. I think if they're all healthy and as good as last year, this is a very deep playoff team. You just need to kind of figure out quarterback and flex. So, yeah, I guess your first order of business is see if Tua's got it, and then find somebody to be your flex. But overall, I think it's a good team. I would probably put it around. I'll put around Stefan and Mac. I think I'll do that. I think there's more upside. Yeah, I think there's more upside because we've just seen them do it. Like Connor and Fournette. Like I would kill if Elijah Mitchell had a Connor or Fournette season. Same thing with Josh Jacobs. So I think there's more elite talent on this team than either of those two teams. But I also think both those teams are deeper than this team. And the quarterback play and the flex are really going to make or break your season. So, yeah, I'm going to give it a B-, but I like the team. It's middle of the pack. You'll be in competition. Maybe it could make a push for a deep playoff run if everybody stays healthy and you do the right things. But, yeah, no. I like the team. I'm surprised. Usually Patrick goes for very boom or bust, and this year that was more like Justin, and this team is just very high-end. Very high-end core, but like a lot of interesting back-end pieces. So I like the team. It's middle of the pack.